Welcome back, folks. Giles Malone for Space Coast Daily here with the experts of Brevard County High School sports. Doing it for 30 years, so they really know their stuff, these two gentlemen. Steve Wilson to my left and Orville Susong. They're the guys who bring you the Friday night locker room every Friday here throughout the season of high school sports. We want to thank them and all their sponsors for doing that for us, and we like to collaborate with them to bring you their content on our multimedia site, Space Coast Daily. Before we get into the boys basketball, we would like to congratulate two local college coaches. First of all, Jeremy Schulman at Eastern Florida State College for his 100th victory there at Eastern Florida. Well done, Jeremy. And also to Coach John Reynolds, the head women's coach at Florida Tech. He had his 500th win. Really good landmark for Coach John Reynolds there. Congratulations, John. Now we're going to get right into the boys basketball. The experts here are going to talk about the results this week, and at the end, we'll give you their top 5 rankings. Steve, how does the 2A shape up?
Class 2A District 11, one of the more competitive districts in this area and in Central Florida in general. Brevard Heat, similar to the girls' side, chasing both Masters Academy and Covenant Christian. Covenant Christian, the district winners last year. Masters, the runner-up. Big game this week where the Heat play in Viera at Masters Academy, and that, I believe, will tell us a lot about who the early leader is in that particular district. Morningside struggling a little bit. The Merritt Island Christian Cougars, they're going to get there. We love watching them play, but they're not quite there yet. I think, for the most part, that's going to be a 3-horse race between the Brevard Heat, Covenant Christian, and Masters Academy. If the Heat can prevail this week, I like the way they look.
Very good. And Steve, Orville, you're Orville, aren't you?
I'm Orville, thank you.
That's right. You're the good-looking one.
I wish he was Steve.
I wish I was Steve.
How does the 3A shape up, Orville?
3A District 13, Florida Air, as always, in the boys section is going to be number 1. You can't do anything but put them up there to start of the season and at the end of the season. But they beat Treasure Coast this week 56-52. Devontae Jordan with 20 points for Florida Air. Also Julius Johnson with 6 points. Florida Air also beat the Rock School 61-45. Austin Smith, Julius Johnson, and Darius Allen, all 3 in double figures for Florida Air. Next up, the number 2 team in the district from last year behind Florida Air, MCC Hustlers. Head coach Rob Terry's got them playing well. They defeated Astronaut 76-38. Kellen Rogers, Frederick Yana, both in double figures for MCC, and Will Erdman added 5 points in that ball game for MCC Hustlers. So it's going to be in Class 3A. It's going to be Florida Air and MCC duking it out for the number 1-2 spot, I think, all year long.
Very good. And the 4A, Steve?
Class 4A District 8, Brevard County. It's going to be the Battle of the Tigers like it has been the last 2 years. The Cocoa Tigers and the Holy Trinity Tigers. Holy Trinity, the reigning district champions, defeated West Shore this week. 86-58, Skylar Hogan once again scoring at will. It's got a little help this year along with Schwab, Goins, and Wallington. So there are 4 or 5 Tigers from Holy Trinity that are putting up points, scoring a lot of baskets, looking good. The Cocoa Tigers, we got our first look at Cocoa last week as they traveled to Melbourne to take on the Bulldogs. You're looking at 2 coaches in Mike Sullivan from Melbourne, James Rowe from Cocoa, a combined 837 wins. That's 2 coaches that know what they're doing on the basketball court. The Cocoa Tigers prevailed in what I might call a mild upset, primarily because Coach Rowe's getting his football players acclimated to basketball. Didn't take one football player long in particular, and that being Chauncey Gardner, one of the best football players in Brevard County. He was our Friday night locker room player of the game. Gardner scored 19 points against Melbourne, as did his teammate Jay Wilcox. Very impressive outing by Coach James Rowe's Cocoa Tigers. The Edgewood Indians, how about Coach Jenkins' Indians defeated Merritt Island Christian 79-57. Fisher, Kaplan, Ellington, and Jenkins, 4 players that scored a lot of points for Coach Rocky Jenkins. Edgewood, I mentioned earlier, they're going to win some games. They're not quite ready to compete with the Holy Trinities and the Cocos, but they're not too far off. Space Coast, Michael Pommier, we're going to have to give him his kudos. He's still undefeated. The Vipers have yet to lose a game, so now at this point in time, there are 3 undefeated teams in that district, the Tigers from Cocoa, Holy Trinity, and Space Coast. Space Coast did defeat a pretty good Cocoa Beach team, 68-58. So 3 undefeated teams. It's a 2-horse race, though. In all seriousness, the Tigers are going to duke it out for the top 2 spots. But come playoff time, everybody plays. The ball bounces right at the right time. You never know.
There it is. Moving up now to the 5A. Orville, how's that look?
Class 5A District 14, Merritt Island Mustangs and the Rockledge Raiders. Merritt Island Mustangs defeated Rockledge this week. Very surprising to me. I didn't think that would happen, and they defeated them soundly, 69-38, and then they turned around and lose to Palm Bay, 56-31. So a lot of things going on early in the season. Coaches having trouble maybe getting the starting five or the five to mesh that they want. So it's going to take a little time for them to get in as they get into the season to be consistent in their winning, I think. But Dufresne, Bushnell, and Zoris, all three in double figures against Rockledge for Merritt Island. The Rockledge Raiders turned around and then they lost 3 games this week. They lost to Titusville, they lost to Merritt Island, and then they lost to O'Galley 57-54. That's the only close one that they had. So Rockledge, for some reason, in a tailspin this week, going the wrong way for Logan Keith and the Rockledge Raiders. Satellite lost to Cocoa, 52-45, and then like Steve said earlier, Cocoa beat Melbourne, and we were there. That was the Friday night locker room game of the week. A very exciting game. Melbourne has the pep band that they put in the gymnasium. The whole one side of the gym was completely full. It was like high school basketball should be.
Great.
Very exciting night for not only us, but everybody in attendance, and hopefully everybody that listened on the radio. Last but not least, Chris Bainbridge and the Titusville Terriers in District 14. They defeated Rockledge. That was one of the teams that beat Rockledge in the 3 losses they had this week. Joe Russell with 23 points, Crouch and Mack both with double figures for the Titusville Terriers. In District 15, also Class 5A, Bayside lost to Melbourne 60-27. A big win there for Bayside. Shaquem Miller with 8 points, Montel Stewart with 4. They combined for only 12 points, but a big defensive game against Bayside there. Palm Bay Pirates defeated the Merritt Island Mustangs after they turned around and beat Rockledge 56-51, and they also defeated Cocoa Beach 68-31. Tawana Alves with 7 points. Langford and McAllister again in double figures for the Palm Bay Pirates. And that's Class 5A for the boys.
Thank you, Orville. Wow, great analysis there. Moving up to the 6A for Steve.
Before we jump into 6A, Orville mentioned that the Rockledge Raiders have been in about a week tailspin. They better unspin because they host the Cocoa Tigers this Friday, and that's a heck of a basketball team. But it's always fun when those two teams get together, so you never know what's going to happen. But moving on to Class 6A District 7, it's a four-team district. The Edgewater Eagles out of Orlando, like on the girls' side, they're the class of that league. They're going to be hard to beat. They've already soundly defeated Heritage and O'Galley, the 2 local teams in that class. So at this point in time, you have to think the Commodores and the Panthers are going to duke it out for the second spot. Heritage beat East River, the other team in that classification this past weekend. They beat a pretty good an improving Viera squad, I'll put it that way. They've struggled a little bit, but the Hawks are improving. 2 big wins for the Panthers this week. Farrakhan, once again, the leading scorer for the Panthers, putting up big numbers. Willett scored 34 points against Viera. Brandon chipped in 17. So a lot of points coming from different players for the Panthers in the last 2 weeks. I like O'Galley. I like Brandon Palmer, what he's done at O'Galley the last few years. Big win against Rockledge, Orville mentioned a few minutes ago, 57-54. Weideman, Joseph, Bernhard, and Santiago, all big games for the Commodores. O'Galley, interesting matchup at Heritage, a big district contest. I think that'll give us an idea of who the number 2 team is behind the Eagles from Edgewater.
Very good, Steve. And moving on to the 7A.
7A, we talked about Melbourne Bulldogs and the Cocoa Tigers playing earlier, but Melbourne also defeated Bayside 60-27 this week, and they beat Astronaut by almost 40 points. So Melbourne putting up big points, and then they turned around and lost to Cocoa 67-55. On the Melbourne side, we saw Melbourne, when they start, their starting 5 at the beginning of the game, 4 of them over 6'2", 1 of them 6'4", 166. So they've got a tremendous height advantage on a lot of teams. Cocoa was able to play with them, though, because of their big, strong inside. Jay Wilcox, he mentioned him, big, strong guy inside. Chauncey Gardner was just all over the place, and he did a great job for him, too. Viera Hawks in the other side of Class 7A, they lost to Heritage 73-50. Spradlin and Wade both in double figures. Rodney with 8 points for the Viera Hawks, and that's Class 7A.
Well, there it is, folks. The experts are giving you analysis of the boys' basketball across all divisions. And now they will give you their top 5 in reverse order going from 5 to 1. We're going to start with Mr. Wilson here. How does it shape up this week?
Well, once again, I have more than 5 in my list, but not too many. I have Space Coast Vipers as an honorable mention. I'm not convinced that Coach Palmier's Vipers can play with my top 5, but they haven't lost a basketball game this year, and they're playing some pretty good teams, and they're beating them soundly. So, I like what they've done, and I'm sure they like what they've done up to this point, but I have them right outside the top 5. I have the MCC Hustlers, Coach Rob Terry's Hustlers, sitting in at number 5, just like on the girls' side. I have MCC at 5. We're going to get our first look at MCC this Friday as they host Benjamin. May climb up the ladder just a little bit, but right now the number 5 team. Number 4, the Melbourne Bulldogs, Coach Sullivan's Bulldogs. We got our first look at them last week. Very impressive squad. It was their first loss of the year. They're going to win a lot of games. They always do. Coach Sullivan, I mentioned earlier, has over 400 wins on the basketball court at the high school level. He knows what he's doing. Number 3, the Cocoa Tigers. James Rose Tigers, I have them slightly ahead of the Bulldogs primarily because of their win against Melbourne. Number 2, the Holy Trinity Tigers. They have yet to lose a basketball game, the defending champions in their district. And number 1, of course, the Falcons from Florida Air Academy. I don't know that anybody locally can beat them right now.
There it is. Steve has Florida Air at number 1. Now, Orville, how does it shape up for you, the top 5 this week?
Well, again, you mentioned top 5, not top 5 plus, the ones that Steve likes extra. But my top 5, like last week, I have the MCC Hustlers at number 5. They defeated Astronaut this week by 36 points. So they're putting up a lot of big numbers against fairly decent teams. So you have to like what Rob Terry is doing at MCC. Number 4, I've got Holy Trinity Tigers, again, winning this week pretty good. So Steve's saying no, but we'll see at the end of the year. He told me no all year long, and then he was embarrassed at the end.
There aren't 3 better teams in the county than Holy Trinity, but please continue.
Okay, thank you very much. Mike Sullivan will argue that the Melbourne Bulldogs are better than Holy Trinity, and you're shaking your head no. You'll get a phone call from Mr. Sullivan probably by Tuesday. I've got the Cocoa Tigers at number 1, James Rowe and those guys. After defeating Melbourne, you have to like their chances. And number 1, just like Steve, we're going to be every week we'll have the Florida Air Falcons at number 1.
Well, there it is. Florida Air ranked number 1 with both the experts here. We'll see how it turns out this week. That is the boys basketball lineup. Please tune in to the Friday Night Locker Room this Friday as MCC hosts Benjamin. And these 2 gentlemen will be there bringing that game to you. And check in with Space Coast Daily for all the action. Once again, Giles Mullen for Space Coast Daily in the Friday Night Locker Room. Thanks for joining us.